frequently. They do kind of a temperature check on Seattle voters a couple times a year. And it's commissioned by the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, and it's done by EMC Research. And I always like to talk about how many people they surveyed, et cetera, just so you can understand how the poll was conducted. So this is their fall 2023 index, which again checks the temperature of voters on some issues that are critical to the city. And they said this was done via live phone, email to web, text to web survey of registered voters in the city of Seattle. It was conducted September 14th to the 24th. And they completed interviews with 700 registered Seattle voters. The data is weighed by key demographic variables to accurately reflect the registered voter population. So they do this in the spring and they do this in the fall. So we have talked about the results of this particular survey before, but this is the latest results. And there were a couple things that really stand out to me that think, okay, the voters overwhelmingly feel the way that I feel about these critical issues. So why are they voting for people who I would, and I imagine a lot of you would, never in your wildest dreams vote for? So there was one graph in particular I thought was notable, and it shows their top 3 concerns, the trend over time of the top 3 concerns of Seattle voters since at least 2021. That has been homelessness, crime, and affordable housing. And what you'll notice is since 2021, homelessness, which still accounts, it's still the top concern, but it's been trending downward, and crime and public safety is a second top concern, and it's been trending upward to the point where those lines on the graph are almost meeting each other. And I think that's because Seattle voters are coming to realize that they're the same thing, that homelessness and crime have such a tie to one another, substance abuse in the mix as well, that it's essentially the same thing. And I almost think it should be treated as the same thing. And then you see affordable housing being the 3rd highest concern, but way down. Only 19% of people who took part in this survey. Now, think about that in the context of how often you hear elected leaders talk about affordable housing. It accounts for way more of the conversation happening among politicians than 19%. I mean, they talk about affordable housing as if it's the panacea, the biggest single issue we face, but voters don't think so. They're looking at homelessness, crime, and public safety, and maybe they're coming around to the fact that affordable housing is not going to fix the homeless crisis. So let's look at some other results of this survey, because it's going to factor into some stories that we're discussing later today. So one of them is on substance abuse. And again, I'm like, who are these Seattle voters? Where are you? Please tell me that you're voting. Please tell me you're telling your neighbors to vote. Because this one asks the question, Seattle's hands-off approach to people using illegal drugs like fentanyl and meth in public is contributing to rampant street crime and is making it much harder for our city to recover. So it asks voters, do you agree or disagree with that statement? 81% said, yeah, I agree. And then to this statement, we should not enforce laws against public use of illegal drugs like fentanyl and meth until we first address the underlying issues driving addiction, like economic inequality, lack of opportunity, and inadequate treatment options. So basically the statement is we shouldn't criminalize drug use. 66% said, I don't agree with that. That's the common sense response.
I think it's tricky how they worded that too. So just to check to see if people were actually paying attention,
right,
or maybe to sway them the other way.
Yeah, because it's worded in a very sympathetic way that you think a lot of voters would be like, oh, well, yeah, we should, deal with economic inequality first. No, 66% are like, I disagree, arrest them before you deal with economic inequality. There was another question on drug use. Basically how the survey worded it is it said they would read you a set of statements. Tell me which one is closest to your opinion. So statement A was, the city's hands-off approach to public drug use is making our city unsafe. Illegal drug users need to be offered treatment first, but if they refuse, they need to be arrested and prosecuted. Or statement B, arresting people for addiction is a return to the failed war on drugs approach. So 71% said they agree with the statement, more so, that you should prosecute drug crimes if someone refuses treatment. And only 27% said, don't do that. That's a return to the war on drugs.
Oh, that's 27%. Really?
It's still
Never.
A lot. Still a lot. Those 27% only read the stranger. And then there was a question on police officers. To the statement, hiring more police officers should be an immediate priority for the city, 74% say they agree. 26% said they disagree, and I don't know what kind of rich enclaves they're living in, but talk about privilege. Y'all want to talk about white privilege. Something tells me I know who answered the 26%. And then to the statement, I trust the Seattle City Council to reform the Seattle Police Department without endangering public safety. 75% said they disagree. They're like, yeah, you guys want to reform policing, but you can't do that without making us deeply unsafe in our communities. So I think the thing that really gets me is, and this is not the first survey that has reflected those sentiments. And then it's like, well, what happens come election time? And so there's this complete disconnect between what surveys and polls show Seattle voters value, what they care about, what they want city government to do, versus who they ultimately vote for. And don't get me wrong, I realize that in a lot of these cases, it's sort of the lesser of two evils. You've just got a bunch of different shades of blue. It's like you can vote for a socialist or a progressive, and I get it that I would probably not be satisfied with I'm not a Seattle voter anymore, but with the vast majority of candidates on the ballot. But there are clearly candidates who value public safety more than others. And I would also say that if those survey results truly reflect the sentiments of the voting populace, that there should not be a single incumbent who gets their job back. There should not be one incumbent allowed to keep their job that has contributed to the environment that we're currently in around crime and public safety. And the reason I think we all need to care about this, even if you don't live in Seattle, is what happens in Seattle infiltrates out to the surrounding areas. Those policies find their way to Olympia. And then you've got the eastern side of the state stuck with state laws that are reflective of Seattle values. So absolutely getting Seattle to just take a little course correct in the right direction is critical. And we're a month away from finding out whether they're capable of doing that.